Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 0 of Backseat Driver. This is a new podcast I'm trying, and you may be wondering why is this episode 0? Just because, this will be a little bit about getting to know me as a person and also just looking ahead at the season as a whole. And I thought, I feel like this is a good sort of starter episode. So, episode 1 will be more about the race, Bahrain GP itself after the weekend. So I thought episode 0 would be appropriate for this. In terms of today, like I said, talking about me and talking about the season ahead and the Bahrain GP specifically. I think this podcast is planning to be a little bit unscripted, a little bit uncut. I've got obviously some bullet points, some topics, but really it's all off the dome and it'll all just be, it's sort of I'm just trying to see, what how this goes. And I've just started out as on a YouTube channel. If anyone listening audio only, it's Varns F1, VARNS F1, which if you're watching on YouTube, did just waste your time there, but we move. So to sort of introduce myself, I'm Varna. I'm 23 years old and I'm a British Indian F1 fan. And that's pretty much my entire personality. No, but it's I'm probably thinking, 23 is probably a DTS fan. No, I've been watching F1 since 2010. Not that there's anything wrong with being a DTS fan, by the way. That's completely fine. It's just that, obviously, someone my age is probably more likely to be than others. But no, I've been watching F1 since I was 10 years old in 2010. My first race was technically the Japanese Grand Prix in 2009, but really I started watching Australia 2010. So I've seen the rise and fall of many a great team, McLaren basically, and other Ferrari constantly bottling it and all that. I've seen most of Lewis Hamilton's career. I've seen most of Seb's career, before he retired, obviously. I've seen Sergio Perez join the grid. I've seen a lot of this stuff, and I remember it, and I've loved the sport since a very young age. I think, to be fair, 2010 was a great season to get into it with the championship battle that we ended up having that year. So I've just been in love with it ever since, and I think honestly my love's grown every single season. I fell out of love maybe for a little bit, sort of end of 2013 when Seb was dominating, but I think that was just, I don't know, I guess it was just one of those things. I was 13, I didn't really appreciate other things. I was more like, now I can appreciate midfield battles and as well as a championship fight up front, just little stories going on throughout the season. Look last year, Alpha and Aston Martin for P5 or P6 last year, sorry, or that was a fascinating little story towards the end of the season in Abu Dhabi. I love F1. I think it's such a not unique, but it's such a technologically advanced sport. It's just fascinating. There's so much going on track and off track, which I think is part of the reason it's so good, is the fact that there's just constantly stuff going on in the paddock as a whole. And I think there's just so much to follow. And hopefully, I can talk about some of these things on the podcast. Just talk about, and hopefully my enthusiasm for the sport comes across. And and I don't know. I don't know what else to say about myself, I guess, and why I love F1. I guess I should let you know I do have a full-time job. I'm not going to say what it is for respect of the job and the company. But I do have a full-time job. So this is very much on the side to that. So this is very much like a hobby, and I just thought I'd start it and see how it goes. And because the dream is really sort of to do something about F1 full-time, because I think for me, you really need to do what you enjoy the most. I think this is something I just really would love to do, because I already talk to my friends constantly about F1 and they're kind of sick of it. So I thought, maybe if I tell random people how much I love F1, maybe they'll relate to it a bit more than them. So and also it spares my friends, having to talk to me about it, which I'm doing them a favor here. So really, this is me doing them a favor more than anything else. No, but in terms of what the plan is for this, the truth is I'm just seeing where it goes. But sort of roughly, I think before and after the weekend, I'll probably try and record an episode. So one before, one after. Um, do a little preview, do a little review after, and all of that stuff. And unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to do this and record a video, for my YouTube channel on the race week itself, because yeah, it's just too tight for time. Like it just is. With a full-time job, and yeah, because I'm just starting out, I'm not very quick at editing, so it's not like I can just edit in a couple of hours. It takes a while for me to get through it all and stuff. So something like this, which requires a little bit lower effort, and unscripted, is going to be good just for me. I say lower effort, I mean, I'll still have to talk for an hour, but it's just less editing required because it's mainly the audio and all of that stuff. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, sort of for context, what I might do in the future for like the release reviews. This is sort of a preview, so you'll be able to see softly what I'm going to talk about in previews and stuff. But for reviews, like I'm planning to do, going through the racing like sort of order, just going through the race in general as a whole, what happened, and then sort of obviously throwing an opinion or whatever, and then giving drivers and teams sort of a rating out of 10, to sort of gauge how they did, how, and then the race as a whole, how it was and stuff. So, yeah, I might keep a little spreadsheet, and see who got the best rating overall by the end of the season. Might show some bias here, because I like to think, I'm fairly neutral. I have opinions. I have plenty of opinions about drivers and teams and whatever, but I try and remain a bit neutral. I have drivers I prefer to others, teams I prefer to others, but not like, I'm not here like invested in a team or a driver in particular. I just have a lot of respect for some I have my hesitations about, etc. I'm sure, I'll talk about that at some point, some of these things at some point, but yeah, I mean, I think, I feel like, I've always sort of an underdog kind of person. I always root for an underdog. So, in a given race, really. So back when Lewis was dominating, I'd have been like, oh, go on, Max, beat him today, because it's unlikely that he would. And I thought, that's exciting to me, the fact that someone who doesn't normally win might win and show how good he is. And, like last year when Max was winning, I was like, oh, go on, Mercedes, because I was like, oh, they weren't winning. So, yeah, it's more about underdogs doing well. And, like Pierre Gasly winning the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. Oh, what a moment that was. I think everyone was happy for him there. But, yeah, it's stuff like that I love the most about the sport, like just underdog stories. I really like the underdog, and I hope we get more this year. Aston Martin looking good. I'll get into that later, but yeah. I think, if there's a lot of ums and ahs, I apologize. I'll try to cut them out. But in terms of like when I speak, because this will, like I said, be very uncut, very unstructured, like not unstructured, but unscripted. So it'll be very different to a YouTube video, which is much more scripted. I've got more points I want to hit. I've got, a lot more sort of production value, I guess you could put. I mean, I say that. It's not exactly a highest of high production value, but here we are. And in terms of, yeah, I guess in terms of the channel as well, just talking generally about the channel, I think I do want to continue doing what I'm doing. Obviously, at the minute, I've only recorded 2 videos, the top 5 reasons to be excited and preseason predictions. And, they're fine videos. They're good. I'm happy with them. I do also want to try and do a bit more, opinion pieces or stories or, whatever. Like, obviously, I'll cover any relevant topics and any sort of thing like that. I think, because if I'm excited about something, if I want to talk about it, then I'll just record it. There's some topics I want to cover as well. Just like, and also I think as well, doing something like this, researching into stories of the past or, doing opinion pieces, it makes my love for the sport even deeper, and because it'll be like so interesting for me to learn about these new things when I do research or when I look into things, and I think hopefully you guys will enjoy that too, the aspect of finding out new things maybe you didn't find, because obviously F1 has grown a lot in the last 5 years, and I think it'll continue to grow, especially as it breaches the American market and grows around the world. Hopefully as well it can breach into start races in Africa, because I think we don't have any races in Africa, which is kind of just odd to me. yeah, but yeah, I think that's really it for just talk about me and the channel and all that stuff. So we can move on maybe to sort of other things. Actually, you know what? Before we get into the season preview, something I haven't talked about on the channel yet. I mean, obviously 2 videos, can't really say much, but something I haven't really touched on is Drive to Survive. Now, I've watched the latest season, as I'm sure a lot of people have. It was better than last year, I think, because of the fact that less was misrepresented. I think, when it first started out in 2018, I think, I had a lot of love for it. I think it was good. I think there was misrepresentation. I did notice a lot of misrepresentation, but it wasn't so bad that I was like dying inside. You know what I mean? And it gave a lot of behind the scenes access, which was cool. Especially 2019 as well, similar kind of thing. It sort of started to get very representative in seasons 3 and 4, which was really bad. I can't lie, I stopped enjoying it because I know the sport very well. Like, it's not like I'm a new fan. Like, if I was a new fan, I think it was really good, especially the early seasons. But as now I'm into it, nah, man, it's not it. Like, if you're in, but yeah, if you're a new fan, I understand. Like, it's really good for bringing new fans in, but then they learn the nuances and the actual way the sport is, and so it's very different. And if they stick around, which a lot of them do, I think, because they just sort of get invested in the stories, the characters, and stuff. So, yeah, and also I don't like the way it portrays bad guys and good guys. Sometimes I think, Max Verstappen, in early seasons when Lewis was winning, was always sort of like, it came across as very much like I'm the guy trying to hunt down in Mercedes. I'm like the hope of F1 kind of thing, which, I mean, fair enough. I mean, he was, but it's one of those things where you're like, who's the good, who's the, like, it's not really any bad and good guys in F1 in my opinion. I think, Alonso technically, I could say if there's a pantomime villain in F1, it would be Alonso for his, I think he's much more chill now than he was back in the day, but he is very much he causes chaos everywhere he goes kind of thing. It's quite funny. Yeah, but I mean, I think Alonso's great, by the way. This is not hate, but yeah, season 5, it was good. It was better than season 4. It was less misrepresentation of what was going on. Like, I think that's fair to say. I think, there was the odd thing. I like when they were talking about Mercedes bouncing back in Silverstone, it was like one of those things where I was kind of like, yeah, I wasn't really sure because it was a bit questionable because it was like they portrayed Spain as this race of like Lewis being like, oh, I want to retire the car, man. And he got passed easily by Carlos Sainz. I was like, that was probably like one of his best races because he went to last because K-Mag hit him. I mean, it was, in my opinion, mostly K-Mag's fault. I'm not going to say Lewis was out completely not to blame. He was partly to blame, as with any incident, really, unless blatant. But, he went to last and then ended up finishing the race closer to the front than when he was in last, despite having all those cars to overtake or to get past and stuff. So, I mean, that was one of his best races. That they could just pick and they sort of, what was the word I'm looking for? They sort of pick and choose the clips from that race, even though that really was one of his best. And Silverstone was portrayed as this huge turning point. But I was like, did he get a podium in Canada and, improve pace Canada onwards? And I think, I mean, to be fair, Silverstone was definitely a big turning point because that was the race he could have won. Like, he had the pace to win that race. So I don't know, it just felt a bit odd. And then also some of the stuff with, I don't know, there's just a few things that really bothered me. And also the fact they didn't focus on Brazil 2022. Like, what? As a weekend, that was the best weekend. Like, that wasn't the best. Like, Silverstone was the best race, but Brazil was the best weekend. So I don't really know why they didn't touch on it. Maybe they didn't go. I think they didn't go, which is odd. I mean, safety reasons maybe, but still odd. And, the K-Mag pole wasn't touched. Russell win, barely touched. And Seb's retirement was barely touched, which was really confusing to me. They didn't really talk about it. Like, the last episode was about Danny Rick and did a whole montage for him. And that's because he's been portrayed as the funny good guy in the series before. And I'm just there like, but Seb is like probably the most loved ahead of Danny Rick because of how just a brilliant human being he is. And I don't know, it was just one of those things where like, yeah, it was a bit baffling, but I did enjoy it more than last season. And I think as well that's partly because as well, like the championship didn't end the way it did. Obviously, it was a domination. I'd rather have it be closer, but Abu Dhabi 2021 was not good for the sport. I don't think. I mean, people have been like, oh, but surely it's good to get eyes on the sport. It's not a bad thing. I'm like, yeah, but do you really want to shake the faith of drivers and some fans? Like, I never really lost faith. I was just like, that was some BS. Like, that was really not okay. And I mean, obviously, the past is the past. We should move on. But I think you can't escape the hangover from that, really. I think the FIA even now is still a mess. Completely mess since then. You've seen so much stuff. I haven't talked about it in my top 5 video, but it's just a mess. The FIA is just completely all over the place, I think. And they focus on such weird things like the jewellery rule and stuff. Like even this weekend, there was this whole thing about like a little jewellery rule thing. And I'm just there like, let Lewis do what he wants, mate. Like just let him do what he wants. Like instead of focusing on enforcing this stupid rule, which doesn't really matter because drivers can have wedding rings. Pierre Gasly can have his cross, but Lewis can't have like an earring in it. Like blood, mate. Like in the nicest possible way. Like if it it's his choice, and if you spent the time you spend enforcing that on other stuff, you may actually be able to steward the sport in any decent manner. Like it's instead of being such a mess of an organization. Yeah, if you can't tell, I'm not the biggest fan of the FIA at the minute. Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I was talking about DTS. But yeah, no. If you haven't watched it, I'd recommend watching it. I think it's a good watch, but I just don't. I wouldn't say that if it's your first time watching it, then I would say go into the season. You don't expect to see the same things you see in DTS in the real life. I think it's great to introduce the sport on a very fundamental entertainment level, but when you get into the technicalities of the sport, it's much more. I think it's actually more interesting the more you get into the technicalities of the sport, which is maybe I'm just a nerd. No, I'm definitely a nerd, but maybe I'm just a massive nerd. Yeah. Okay. I think that's pretty much just all the stuff like before we get into talking about the season and ahead and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm about 18 minutes in and I've said almost nothing so far. So that's pretty much sums me up. I'm a bit of a rambler. I chat a lot and for very long about very little, but for some reason my friends still seem to hang out with me. So I can't explain that one to you, but maybe you guys will like it too. Anyway, yeah, let's just look ahead to the season now. I think now that ramble's done. Yeah, testing. So I did season predictions before testing. Well, I recorded it on day 1 of testing when Aston Martin broke down, which, at the time I thought, they'll improve, but, clearly there's not all there. Yeah, that's gone well, hasn't it? It's currently, 2 p.m. on the Friday, and Alonso was second in between the Red Bulls on FE1. So that went well. That aged well. And my predictions are already in the mud. Like, I look at them and I'm just like, oh God, what have I done? Like, I question everything, honestly. Because the issue is if I had more time, I'd be able to put them out, record it earlier and put them out before the test so that it doesn't look as bad. But now I've done them, recorded them on the day of the first day of the test, and put them out after. It makes me look like an idiot. And I'm like, I'm not an idiot. I actually do know things, I promise. But it just doesn't come across. Oh, no. But yeah, anyway, who knows? Maybe I'll be right and maybe everyone will be like, oh, wow, how did you do that? I'll be like, I'm amazing. But I just so doubt it. Oh, God, what a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, I think starting from the back, I guess, we can talk about Williams. What can you say about Williams, really? They're probably still the slowest car. I mean, I think they look quicker, but so does everyone else. And I think, if everyone makes a step forward, then someone's going to have to make relatively a step back, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I think Williams would have taken a step forward closer to the pack. I think we saw Alex last year constantly putting in the P13s, P12s, P11s, all of that stuff. So clearly there was pace there last year, and maybe they'll be able to do that. He'll be able to do something similar this year with Logan Sargent, but yeah, they still look last. And I think there's not much to report. I think they just looked better, but I think everyone looked mostly. We'll get there. Looked better. So I guess we'll see. Hopefully, he can score some good points. I hope Logan can get some points. That'd be good. But yeah, I think who finished ninth? AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri finished ninth last year. Yeah. So they look. I don't even know. They're a bit of a mystery to me because everyone's like, oh yeah, they're the second slowest. I'm like, really again? Like, I don't know. It just seems odd for me that AlphaTauri would be there because since 2010, I mean, in 2010 to like 2012 maybe, they were very meh. I mean, 2012 was so close as a season. I don't think that, we can really say any team was so bad except for a couple. If you don't know their history back then, but I won't go into it. Actually, no, I will. Basically, 2010 to 2012, we had 3 teams at the back, new teams joining 2010, and they were terrible. They were so bad. They were, so HRT, Virgin, and when they joined, they were Lotus. They went through various iterations because they didn't have any money, basically. HRT folded after 2012. Lotus became Team Lotus, which became Caterham, and that folded after 2014. And then Virgin became Marussia, which became Mana, which then folded after 2016. So, yeah, they're not. They weren't very good. They were really bad. They were at the back. They were at the very back throughout the entire time. But apart from that, back then, it was very close, especially 2012, very close. And yeah, but Toro Rosso as they were back then, were never really that bad. I don't remember them being that bad. I think 2013, they were okay. Like they were 2012, they were not great. They were towards the back for sure. 2013, they were sort of, if I remember correctly, they weren't bad, but they weren't amazing either. 2014, I feel like in the turbo hybrid era, 2014 to 16, they were actually pretty decent. They would actually score some good points, semi-regularly. 2017 even, really. 2018, they were experimenting with a Honda engine, you can't really say anything. And then 2019, sort of similar kind of thing. They were kind of test unit, but like less so. 2020, 2021, they were quick. They just were quick. And Pierre Gasly was quick. And 2022, they were just not very good. So hopefully they don't return to the whole 2010, 2012 when they're just sort of at the back, towards the back, not at the back. Because otherwise I don't think the Red Bull drivers will have an opportunity to show what they can do, which is actually a big part of that. I think a big part of the reason it's such an important team to have at the grid is because it gives the Red Bull juniors a chance to show themselves, and if they're at the back, then they can't really do anything. They're like, oh, P17 and 18 trundling around, you know what I mean? But yeah, it doesn't look like they're great, but also at the same time, it doesn't look like it. I don't really know. It's hard to judge off that. And also, it's important to remember, Bahrain is just a track. It's not, I think we can see that it'll suit some cars better than others, but then we'll go to Jeddah, which is different, very different. Bahrain's medium-low speed mainly. Jeddah's high speed. We go to Australia, which is high speed and kind of like, I guess it's kind of a mix, but, it's much more high speed than it used to be for sure before the changes. But, I think, we're judging off a test where we're looking at one type of track. Who knows, maybe Aston Martin in medium and low speed is amazing, but in high speed, they're not as amazing. And it's like, Mercedes, amazing in high speed, but maybe not medium, low speed. You never know. Yeah, but we'll see. We'll see on AlphaTauri. I'm reserving judgment, but they don't look good, really. Yeah. P8, we have last year I've seen is Haas. They looked good. They did look good. A lot better than I was expecting. A little bit of a handful in the brakes, but that's because, that's just because the Haas always seems to have brake issues. Since they started in 2016, Haas have had brake issues every year, which has been really weird, actually. Yeah, it's been very odd. Just every single year, they seem to have some kind of problem with braking, and it's just like, what's causing them to have all these problems? I don't know. But yeah, Haas looks decent. I think they could actually genuinely be faster than McLaren. I don't think they'll be without Aston Martin, but obviously not. Aston Martin look like they made a huge step, but They look good. What else? Then it's who was seventh? Oh yeah, Aston Martin. Now they just look ridiculous, don't they? They look like they could beat Mercedes. They look like they could be there with Ferrari. I mean, it's crazy. I didn't think that would happen. I wasn't expecting that to happen. It's, Alonso makes bad career choices all the time. What's this? What's gone on? Why have they been so quick? I mean, clearly Lawrence Stroll's investment's finally working. I mean, to be honest, it's a bit. I don't dislike Stroll. I think he's got talent, but I think it's a shame that they don't have two amazing drivers in the team. Like, I think they have an amazing driver in Alonso, and then just a decent driver. They don't have I think there are loads of drivers on the grid that are better than Lance Stroll. In my opinion, I think. Could he be bottom 5? Oh, that feels harsh. I don't know. He could be. But he's not bad. The thing is, he's actually pretty decent, especially in wet and stuff. But he's not that inspiring, is he? I mean, he's just not amazing. He's just good. I think for a team that could be competing, I think that's going to let them down. I mean, I said that in my preseason predictions, but obviously I didn't know they'd be further up than they are. But yeah, I think I'd also love to see Alonso and Hamilton scrapping like back in 2007. I mean, I obviously wasn't watching the sport back then, but I've watched plenty of highlights. I've seen plenty of footage. I know quite how legendary their scrap was. The scraps are, and yeah, I don't know. I think, Alonso's one of the best defenders in F1, and Lewis Hamilton's, in my opinion, one of the best racers. Or early 20. I mean, a lot of people say, "Well, look at his incidents," but come on, wheel to wheel, he's an incredible driver. I think he had a few incidents last year. Not many of them were his fault, really. I think when you're scrapping the midfield against aggressive drivers, it ends up happening. I think that's not really something to hold against him. I think, he's made some mistakes for sure. They're much more high profile than other drivers. People remember his mistakes more than others. But I think if you watch the early 2010s, you can see his wheel-to-wheel combat is ridiculous. 2014 Bahrain, example of how good his wheel-to-wheel combat is. He beat Rosberg, who was on technically better tyres at the time, and he beat him in wheel-to-wheel combat and just showed that he is really good at wheel-to-wheel combat. He just is. I think it'd be harsh to judge him otherwise. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they go wheel-to-wheel, because obviously Alonso can defend like a lion, and Hamilton can race very well, no matter what people think. But yeah, and then obviously Alfa Romeo, they're good. Yeah, they look good too. Similar to Haas, maybe slightly better actually. I'm impressed. I didn't think they would be, like I said in my preseason predictions, but I didn't say they would be. I think they would be as quick as they were, but they look good. But this is one of those things where I'm like, everyone's looking good. No one looks bad. Like, literally no one looks bad, apart from McLaren. But we'll talk to them in a sec. Talk to them about them, not to them. I'm not going to have fucking pull out Lando Norris, am I, just now? Yeah, no, I think McLaren Alfa Romeo look good. I hope they can get some good points. I think Zhou hopefully can do well. I do like Zhou. I do think he might get replaced by Théo Pourchaire at the end of the season, because I think Théo Pourchaire in F2 might win the championship, and that will lead to his replacement. I mean, it's sad because I don't dislike Zhou, but I think Teo's probably much more of a prospect. Teo's only 19, 20. And yeah, he's very impressive. I don't know, he's going into his third season, Théo Pourchaire, and usually that's like make or break, or, if you win in your third season, you don't often get the praise than other driver who wins in their first or second. But I mean, I think Théo got very lucky last year. In his first season, he was only 18. We have to remember, that's crazy. That's really young. I think it'd be too harsh to judge him on a first season. And did he win Monaco that year as well? So that's really impressive. So yeah, I think, and also F2 for a spec series isn't actually that equal. So I don't remember what car he was in at the time. But I don't think it was one of the best, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember. Only last year did he really have the car to win, and he kept blowing up because of Mecha Chrome. Yeah, but I think Théo will probably take a seat. But yeah, I'm hoping Zhou can show he's good enough for a third season. But Théo has to get a seat, I think. If he does well this season, obviously. If he just falls off a cliff, that's whatever. But yeah, and then McLaren, they just don't look very good. They said they're bringing their things to Baku, so I think Baku's where we'll actually see where they are really. But first 3 races, not having good pace is going to be painful for them. I think there might be a Q1 exit. Like I said, everyone takes a step forward. Someone's going to have to take a relative step back, and that seems to be McLaren at the minute. Who knows? Maybe they could be up in 7th or 6th place by the end of the season, like I predicted. But God knows, honestly, it's not good. And I think it's a shame. I do like McLaren. I do want them to move forward. I remember when they used to be really good in 2010 to 2012. They were a top team. It's so weird how my mindset shifted with that, because it's like I used to see them as a top team, like a team to beat. Now I'm just here like, oh yeah, they're not very good. And it's just crazy because I used to see them as such an important big team, such a team to beat. Yeah, they never used to. You know what? They're kind of like Ferrari. Actually, they had the car, but they never managed to execute, and they always had reliability issues. But yeah, hopefully they can return to the top, because I do think they belong there. I mean, I say that because I started watching the sport when they were a top team. Yeah, and it's a shame that they fell so far. 2012, they had a car to win the championship, but they kept having reliability problems, and yeah, they just messed it up that year really badly. I think that's why Lewis left in the end, next year. So I understand why. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a controversial decision at the time, but yeah. But hopefully Lando doesn't feel like he needs to do the same thing, because I think Lando is a world champion in waiting if he gets the right car. And I don't think McLaren is providing that at the minute. And I think they could. And I hope they do, because I think it would be cool for Lando to win it with McLaren, because I think he loves McLaren. So, yeah. Alpine, what? I have no idea. They were slow as hell in testing, but they didn't run any of the softer compounds. They look confident. They sound confident. They were P17 and 15. That was, yeah, I think so, in FP1. But they seem to just be confident. I'm like, is that just misplaced, or is that genuine, like, oh yeah, we've got something, we're just sandbagging because we know how quick we are? Yeah. But also, why would you not put on soft tyres? It seems very odd. I know they were trying to do it because, Bahrain Grand Prix is hovering these tyres, but yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what's going on with them. But if they're confident, then maybe they're up there with Aston. You never know. You just don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Alpine is just a mystery to me. I think, for me, they've always been very arrogant as a team. I never had a lot of love for them, because they've always come across as very arrogant. I liked them when they were Lotus back in 2012 to like 15. But since they switched to Renault and Alpine, I've never really liked them. They give a sense of arrogance of like, oh, we belong at the top. We're one of the big boys. But they've never actually been one of the big boys. They've acted like they were. They've talked the talk but never walked the walk, basically. And I think it'd be cool to see them do that. I actually respect them more, because I think after all these years of talking the talk, they have to walk the walk at some point, right? So maybe this is the year. But also, the more cars at the front, the better, really. And I guess, speaking of the front, we can talk about Mercedes now. They look like they have balance issues. They look, no porpoising. Their car's definitely going to be better than it was last year. But they have balance issues. Once they sort those out, I don't think it'll take them long. We saw how quickly they can sort things out last year. Once they sort out balance issues, I think they'll be good. I think they'll be off the pace. I think they'll be like Red Bull 2017 to 19. Off the pace, but then catch up throughout the season. Everyone gives them hype for next season because they're caught up. Then the next season, they've lost it all again. They're back where they started. I don't think they'll be exactly the same. I think Mercedes will start closer. I think what I will say is Mercedes will start closer than Red Bull did in that little period of 3 years. But I hope they catch up enough, because I think more cars in title fight, the better. I think being off the pace to start with and catching up, I don't know, I feel like being the chaser sometimes is really motivating. I think that could be cool to see Mercedes just catch up and beat teams. I think we saw, how quickly they can develop. Last year they started so far off the pace and then they caught up. And I think if the deficit's even like 6/10, they can make that up. And more importantly, race pace. Their race pace last year was good. If their race pace this year relative to their quali pace is as good, then it's good, because then if they're 60th off in quali, they're probably even less off in the race. That's great. That's what we need. We need more good racing, because these rules were brought in for good racing and they've provided. But Silverstone last year, oh my God. Also, I am going to Silverstone this year and I was so excited. I'm going with a friend and I'm so excited for it. And I kind of dragged them, to be fair. I feel a bit bad. I was like, we should go. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, it'll be fun. And they were like, you know what? Yeah, we said we'd go. And I was just like, yeah, sure. So hopefully that'll be fun. Hopefully it's a good race. Otherwise, I've wasted their money because it was expensive. Because oh my god, they priced out fans absolutely, and I'd hate it. But there you go. Yeah. Anyway, Ferrari, they're just solid. They look solid. I think they had some issues in FP1 today, but they just look solid generally. They don't look like they've got too many issues. They look sort of similar to last year, really, in most senses. They've just, they just look very similar to last year. They're just solid, quick, a little bit of bouncing, but nothing crazy. And their car seems to be very stable through corners despite the bouncing, so it's really not a concern for them. Yeah, they just look good. And I don't think they're as quick as Red Bull, but they look good, and I think they something to build off of and maybe catch up to Red Bull, or I think throughout the season we'll see a close up because of Red Bull's cost cap penalty, and I think Red Bull right now as well. Moving on to them, I guess, is looking rapid. They look. Max Verstappen's just there, like just sitting back, oozing confidence. Like, yeah, I know, I'm good. I'm better than all of you. And to be fair, he's probably the best driver in the grid right now. But yeah, it's not great if Red Bull are miles ahead for anyone, really. Hopefully other teams can catch up, because Red Bull looks just invincible at the minute. It's just crazy. Adrian Newey, man, is a genius. I'm not saying Max Verstappen isn't brilliant. Of course he's brilliant. He's probably the best on the grid right now. But Adrian Newey, yeah, he's just so good at this, man. Like, he did write his thesis on ground effect. So I'll be honest, that did give Red Bull an advantage. But yeah, no, I think, to be honest with you, I'm really glad. Like, it's one of those things where these rules were probably brought in definitely to sort of try and reset the order a little bit with Mercedes domination. And I can't lie, that's fair. It's been done in the past plenty of times. 2005 to stop Ferrari worked. And back in the 90s, etc., to stop Williams. All of these work, and it's a good thing. You don't want a team dominating, but usually what happens is one team finds a loophole and they dominate, and that's a problem, though. You don't want that. Like, you want teams to sort of, settle down. And yeah, I think throughout the season, though, like, just sort of talking about the season as a whole, I think we'll see a close up of the pack as well because of the sliding scale of development. We'll see, because certain teams, obviously the lower teams get a lot more computational fluid dynamics, CFD time, and lots more wind tunnel time. Williams will get a lot. And then Red Bull, at the top, Red Bull get the least. And with their cost cap penalty as well, I think that will hinder them even more. Although this whole thing about, it's 10% is draconian from Christian Horner last year, it's probably not that bad. I mean, come on. Like, it's probably not that bad. In fact, I think it was probably a little bit light, in my opinion. If you really want to make sure that teams don't, then simply put, make it harsher. I mean, I'm not anti Red Bull. I'm just saying I think it wasn't. And also the fact the fine didn't come out their budget cap baffled me, because if you think about it, right? Think about maybe Haas. Yeah, if they got a fine of 7 million, right? For them, they can't afford. They spend 135 million, and that's all they can afford to spend. So that 7 million is out their budget cap, because they can now only spend 128 million because they've had the 135 million. Whereas Red Bull is like, they could spend 400 million, but they're limited to 135. So they just take 7 million of the money they weren't spending and just throw that out, so they still have that budget cap. So it doesn't make sense to me that didn't come out of the budget cap. And the aerodynamic testing thing, the reduction was too low, just because I think no team will do it because of reputation, I think, now. But in my opinion, it should have been a little bit harsher. Just a little bit harsher. Also, if they really wanted to stop Red Bull dominance, then it should have been harsher. They love to stop dominance. Like, this sport loves to stop dominance as much as possible. They're slow to act. It takes them a few years. Obviously, Mercedes took 8 years with Red Bull. It took 4 with Ferrari. It took 5. They attack slowly, but they do want to stop dominance whenever they can, which is fair. I can't blame them. But they accidentally cause new dominance every single time, which is just ironic, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, no, I think we'll see a general theme of just the pack closing up, and I like to believe that I like to believe that, I think McLaren will progress. I think as a team, teams I can see doing the best progression-wise, Aston Martin, I think because of their championship standing last year, it will actually help them. If they made such a good car already, it's going to help them the fact they have a lot more testing time. So I think they'll do well. I think McLaren will do well as well. I think Mercedes will do well in development. I think Haas and Alfa will be a similar story to last year. Start strong, fall off. Williams, I can see sort of maintaining where they are. But you never know. I could be wrong on that. AlphaTauri, again, mystery to me. I never really know. They've really gone under the radar since in 2022, didn't they? 2020 and 2021, they were a big feature, but 2022, they were just under the radar. For me, at least. They're just sort of always not very good. They were sort of just in P12, P13, like anonymous. Very odd. Very odd. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the season preview, I guess, for me. I don't know. I guess all else to talk about. It's just, I really hope it's a good one, to be honest. 2021 was obviously an incredible year for the championship battle. In my opinion, it wasn't the best year of Formula One I've ever seen. 2012 holds that title. But it was a good year. There's no point denying it. It was a great year for a championship battle. I think it was the best championship battle I've seen, for sure. But it wasn't the best year of Formula One. I think, 2012, also the final race, like the Brazil 2012 was also, as a finale, was 10 times better than Abu Dhabi 2021. Don't get me wrong, the last lap of Abu Dhabi 2021 was the most dramatic thing I've ever seen in the sport. At the time, it's like, wow, this is incredible. But afterwards, you sit down, you're like, whoa, that was not okay, So it's one of those where it leaves a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth, despite the fact that it was incredible objectively, from a neutral / outside perspective of someone who's watching it for the first time. Because some people watch it for the first time, that race, because of the hype. And they must be like, oh my God, this is incredible, right? I got them into the sport, and I think it's really good. That's very positive. Very, very positive. But yeah, as a long-time fan, it didn't sit right with me. And I think, I'm glad, I don't know, just didn't sit right with me. Again, I should stop bringing it up. It doesn't matter anymore. It's been over a year. People are going to call me Crymilton fan or something because of the fact that I'm crying about it, but I'm not. It's just one of those things where I'm just there like, it was dodgy and I'm not happy about it. In fact, it happened. Yeah, but I'm hoping with the racing, racing will be close this year. So I'm hoping maybe 2012. I'm not hoping for the same level as 2012, but maybe nice in between 2012 and a good year, a bad year. Like, I don't know, what was a really bad year for racing? I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I think there's always been something to enjoy in every season. I don't think I've ever had even 2014, 2016, when Mercedes was so clear, you enjoyed the little battle between Lewis and Nico because they were tight. They were close. Lewis was probably better, but Nico gave everything and eventually won. So I got to give him credit. That's fair. Equal machinery, no less. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how stuff progresses. Like Mercedes with George. Will George beat Lewis again? Personally, I think Lewis is better at the minute, so no. Lewis, I think last year just got very unlucky, and also experimental setups for the first 8 rounds, which, that will hurt. I think, Verstappen will have the measure of Perez quite easily. Leclerc will beat Sainz, although Sainz, I think, will be better this year with mistakes and stuff. I think Ocon will beat Gasly. Yeah, I think Ocon is really good. I think as well Gasly will just be on the bad end of reliability, and maybe some incidents that crash into each other. I can see that happening too with Ocon's aggression against his teammates specifically. McLaren, Norris beating Piastri is Piastri's first season. I think Norris is world class. Alfa Romeo, I think Bottas will beat Zhou over the course of the season. But Zhou might outqualify Bottas. I've said that in season predictions, but I think over the course of the season in terms of racing, Bottas will beat Zhou. Who's next? Aston Martin, Alonso will destroy Stroll. I think it will be annihilation. But he still won't get the drops because he's dad's son, in it. Dad's son, obviously he's his dad's son. His owner's son. And his dad's the owner. So yeah, and then I'm forgetting the teams. Alfa Romeo. Oh no, Haas. I think Hulkenberg may beat K-Mag. I think K-Mag has a bit of an advantage, but at the same time, I do think Hulkenberg is just very consistent, and I think that will shine through. AlphaTauri, I can see Yuki finally coming good this year and maybe beating Nick. I mean, although Nick is an incredible driver, the more I hear about Nick, though, it's like, he's actually really good. Shit, like he's really good, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have put Yuki ahead of Nick in my season predictions, but well. But I'm gonna back Yuki. I think Yuki is great. I think Yuki has a lot of potential, so hopefully he can show it for the first time consistently this year, because he shows it at times, but not consistently. And then finally, Williams, I think Albon will dominate Sargent. I think that Sargent has had a good... I saw a graphic in FP1 which showed his junior career. It did not look good. It made him look so bad. It was like F3 2019, 17th place, F3 2020 third, F3 2021 7th, F3 2022 4th. I'm like, but he's so much better than those stats indicate. And I was like, he's actually really good. He pushed Oscar Piastri in 2020 in F3, and 2019, 2021, he didn't have the car to compete in F3. And 2022, yeah, sure, but he was his rookie, so it's not really like he did badly. And he was the best placed rookie, so I just don't think he's as bad as that made him look. And I really do. I think he'll do well. He won't be as far off as Latifi. I just don't see him being Albon, especially because with such limited testing, he'll have to take time to get up to speed. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's not like Lewis Hamilton in 2007, who had a whole season's worth of mileage before starting in 2007, which is why he was up to speed so quickly. Again, don't get me wrong. The fact he was on Alonso's pace from the start and scored 9 podiums in a row to start his F1 career is stupid. But at the same time, he did have a lot more testing. So it's like, now you can never see that happening. Even if someone joined, let's say, someone hopped in straight to Red Bull, you never see them, doing that because they won't have enough testing time. They'll be so far off Max or whoever's in the other seat to start with, and then catch up, and then maybe at the end of the season won't do it. But anyway, my point is that the limited testing does mean it takes longer for drivers to get up to speed than they used to. I'm not criticizing Lewis. I think Lewis is one of the best of all time. Don't worry, Lewis fans, and also Max fans. Don't worry, I like Max too. Relax. Sorry, just Twitter in it. Twitter's wild for this stuff, man. 47 minutes. Jesus, I can talk, can't I? I should talk for England. Yeah. I think that's really all I need to say on that. So I think we should talk about Bahrain GP, look ahead. I mean, last year we know what happened. Double Red Bull DNF, double Ferrari podium, 1-2 in fact. Mercedes scabbing third place with Lewis. Can't see that happening again. Red Bull looks pretty bulletproof. I think it'll be a 1-2 quite easily. Yeah, I think it'll be Verstappen, Perez, and then maybe Alonso in third. I can see Alonso just profiting and just getting a third place out of nowhere, me being like, and just being so gassed about it. I just can see that happening. He'd be like, told you guys, told you I'd do well. But yeah, I can see that happening. But you never know. I hope for a close race. I hope, Red Bull doesn't completely dominate. I hope it's closer than it looked. I hope some chaos happens. I hope it'll be fun, Yeah, I mean, just looking for free practice one, I mean, it just looks like Red Bull are in a different league, and Aston Martin are good and Ferrari are good, although they're having some issues at the minute. Mercedes look a bit off the pace, but not bad. They look decent. Alpine have no idea still. It's looking okay. Like, FP2 will be more representative, and I think, I think pole. I think Verstappen will get pole by a couple of tenths from maybe Charles. I think Perez might be third. I can't see Max Verstappen for pole. Podium, I could see Verstappen, Perez, and then Alonso, like I said. But I think we'll see some interesting ones. I think, we'll be surprised by something. I think, in terms of good, I think of surprises, I think potentially Lance Stroll could be a surprise. I think positive surprise, because I think, he's not had preseason testing. I think he'll be off Alonso's pace, but I think he could still show decent. I think, once he gets it, I think, think about it, Nico Hulkenberg jumped in the Racing Point in 2020 in the Eiffel Grand Prix in Nürburgring. He qualified P20 because he hopped in for qualifying. And then in the race, he finished P8. He got up to speed as he was racing and got quicker and quicker and ended up in P8. I can see Lance doing the same thing. I can see Lance. I don't think he's as adaptable as Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg. Oh my word. I think I got a bit of a cold coming on. He's not as adaptable as Hulkenberg, admittedly, but I think that he could still do a decent enough job, you know? Yeah, I think I'll be surprised. I think he could be a positive surprise. I think because everyone's expectations are like he'll be shit. So I can see him being good, basically, better than I think expectation. I think I also have this just bad feeling about. I don't know. I just got this feeling that Logan Sargent will have a bad weekend. Not because he's bad, but just because I think something will go wrong for him. I think he'll do something which I don't know. I just don't see it going well. I don't know. It could be Piastri. I think one of the rookies will have a bad weekend. I think Piastri or Nick or him will have a bit of a dodgy weekend. Possibly even Gasly and Alpine might be pretty bad. Like, I don't know. This whole thing about Alpine being Gasly, Alpine being confident could be very misplaced. And it could end up being like, Alpine are actually just terrible. They actually are just bad. I'm like, oh my God. But I'm hoping for not. But I think, Aston Martin will be the best team in terms of like the actual expectation. I mean, the expectation is quite high, but I still think they'll be very good. I think Alpine could be, but they could also be the worst. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see because I don't know. I think it's hard to gauge who will be the best or the worst at this early stage. I think in terms of relative to expectations, because I think Red Bull expectation is easy win. Ferrari is like second, and then the rest, like Aston Martin and Mercedes, fighting for third. That sort of expectation. Who will outperform? Who will underperform? It's hard to say. I mean, I think McLaren looking better in FP1, so maybe they'll overperform expectations. Maybe they'll be a good team, but maybe Piastri will still have a bit of a rough one. But I think on a first race weekend, it's very difficult as a rookie. I think historically rookies have always struggled at the start. I mean, actually no, that's probably a bit wrong, isn't it? Yuki Tsunoda 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix got 9th or 10th. Joe Guanyu last year, similar deal, got 10th in his debut. Fair play to both of them for that. So maybe I'm wrong, but I mean Nikita Mazepin, I guess, but he was just bad, wasn't he? And he was only there for money and because he's a daddy's cash, God, what an era that was. The Nikita Mazepin era was a hell of an era for Formula One, wasn't it? Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think the rookies won't do very well. No, sorry, that's not true. I think the rookies will do well. I just think one of them will have a bad weekend. God, I just said that. I don't know why. I just didn't even think about it. I just said that. I was like, wait, what am I talking about? Oh, God. Yeah. So Verstappen pole. Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc podium. Leclerc, Alonso podium. Best performer, I'm going to go with... Surprisingly best performer. Okay, no, let's go with best performer. Best performer, I'm going to go with Alonso. Worst performer, I'm going to go with Sargent. Actually, no, relative to expectations, maybe not Sargent. I'm going to go with... Ooh, I don't know. I'm going to go with Stroll. No, but Stroll expectations aren't very high. Well, for me at least, they're not high. Ooh, spicy. Huh. I'm gonna go with Nick de Vries, maybe. I think he'll do worse than Yuki, maybe, and I think that's maybe expectation is he might beat him. Maybe. And best team, Aston Martin. Worst team, I'm gonna go with AlphaTauri again. I think Williams I expect to be last. AlphaTauri is a bit of an unknown. I think maybe they'll be just bad. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's not much else to say. I think, Lance Stroll coming back is good for him. I'm happy. I mean, I'm sad for Drogovic because I think it would be cool to see him get a run out. But yeah, good for Lance to be back. I don't think there's much else to talk about really about this weekend. I don't really know what else to cover. It's been a bit of a yeah, it's been a nice episode. It's been nice to talk about this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And yeah. Um, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about? Oh, I'm gonna watch the race in a bar in London. So yeah, if you know, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'll obviously let you guys know how that was. I've obviously watched the bars in London before, but so opening race of the season is a little bit special, isn't it? Yeah, and I think it'd be cool. I think hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully, like I haven't rambled on too more and it's too boring or whatever. But I think I like to think I'm also getting comfortable in front of the camera. I'm getting comfortable with all this talking to the mic. So I hope that you guys stick with me and enjoy this because I think this is a journey for me. It's a journey for it's a journey for me really to sort of work out what I'm doing, to work out how to do all this, to grow and become better and all of that stuff. And I think it'll be fun to see where this goes. And I think I'm excited because I really do love talking about Formula One, and I really hope that I can make something of this. And right now it's just a hobby for me. It's just a hobby for me, so I don't really care. Yeah, I hope hope you got that reference. But yeah, it's just a hobby, and I really hope that a hobby can be something I grow and do more of, and because I really am enjoying it so far, and I hope you guys, any of you that maybe listen to this and have watched the videos, are enjoying it too. Yeah, let me know what you thought. Let me know if you prefer this kind of style or like the edited videos, or I mean, obviously it's early in the edited video style, so maybe my style will change or I'll do different things. Talk about other things. So I don't think my channel is just going to be top 5 reasons or predictions. It'll be a bit more than that. So yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed. And yeah, I will speak to you after the weekend and have a good one. See you next time. Cheers.